Now, all the vital records in Pennsylvania, no matter what time period, I have one favorite. I've picked one, and in this episode of Your Pennsylvania Ancestors, I'll tell you what it is and why it's going to be your favorite too. This is Denise Allen with Your Pennsylvania Ancestors, and I think I'm just going to call myself a Pennsylvania nerd at this point. I'm a total nerd, all things Pennsylvania, especially genealogy and history. I find this state really fascinating. You probably can tell. And in this episode, I'm going to tell you about my favorite vital record. I've been covering vital records this season, starting with the modern ones in the 20th century that most of us are familiar with, and then moving to the 19th century in the last episode, and maybe causing you a little bit confusion with that episode, with all the variations and differences between cities and counties and time periods. But this one is a little bit simpler because it was just issued over about a 35-year period, but it's really unique. I mean, like super duper unique. So, are you ready to hear about my absolute favorite vital record? Here, we're going to do a little celebration. It is delayed birth certificates. Now, technically today you can still get delayed birth certificates, but when these first started in 1941, it was the first time they were offered. And we're going to go on our time machine again. So here we go again to our time machine to 1941. And something happened about a decade earlier that caused delayed birth certificates to start for the first time in 1941. So, what was the thing that started in the 1930s that was the cause of delayed birth certificates? It was the Social Security program. When FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, instituted Social Security, adults across the nation could apply for a Social Security number, but they had to prove how old they were in order to get that number. It makes sense. Social Security was paying retirement benefits. That's all it was when it first started. It just paid retirement benefits, and they wouldn't know when you qualified for those benefits unless they knew how old you were. So you needed to show up with some sort of proof. And I've already explained how there wasn't 100% compliance across the state in terms of birth registrations. When the Social Security law passed in 1935, if you didn't have some way to prove your age, such as like a church baptism, they would have accepted that, an official church baptism certificate, or a birth registration from your county, or if you were very young and wanted to apply for a Social Security number, your actual birth certificate from the state that started in 1906, then you were sort of out of luck. I mean, how are you going to get a Social Security number? And after 6 years, the state of Pennsylvania figured it out by allowing people to apply for a delayed birth certificate. You'll find these collections a little bit on Family Search and a little bit on Ancestry, but they're very rarely been microfilmed and imaged into digital records. I know, you hear me say this a lot. You're going to see some of them, but you're not going to see all of them. And this is what makes genealogy so challenging. You have to know as a genealogist what you're going after, and then the second layer is to know where you're going to find it. So you have to know first what you want, and then you go and look for it. With these delayed birth certificates, because they were a county-created record, now realize the state was already issuing official birth certificates in the 1930s and the 1940s. So for infants born during that time, they're busy chugging out these birth certificates. But they allowed the counties to issue these delayed birth certificates because people could go to their county courthouse with 3 affidavits, 3, and apply for this delayed birth certificate. Now, here's the confusing part, because there's always a confusing part with records in Pennsylvania, well, genealogy records in general. The confusing part is each county had a different kind of form. I know, I'm laughing. I always find this so funny. Because I find the form in one county and I think, oh, this is what the form looks like everywhere. And then I go to a different county and I'm like, oh, this is a completely different form. So don't be surprised if you're researching your ancestors in Pennsylvania, or if you researched your ancestors with delayed birth certificates in another state, because every single state did these delayed birth certificates because people needed them. that you see the form in one place and it looks completely different in another place. But they all basically had a similar structure. A person would apply for it, and he or she would say, "This is my name, my address, these are my parents, here's where I was born, here's where my parents were born, this is my date of birth." And then they provide some sort of evidence to back that up. So maybe they got a note from their doctor who delivered them. That's possible. They could have gotten a note from a minister producing a baptism record. Now, I already said that people could have used that to apply for Social Security, but this was also a piece of evidence that could have been used for these delayed birth certificates. And then they could had to provide witnesses with affidavits where these individuals that this person knew would verify what the applicant's birthday was and how long they knew them. So this is the part that's my favorite part of this vital record because, other vital records give you the parents, and the address. I already have that information. But with delayed birth certificates, if they applied for one, I now have the 3 closest people to this ancestor, right? Because you wouldn't pick just Joe Schmo up off the street to do an affidavit. You'd pick someone that you trust to swear that they knew your birthday and where you were born and could verify your age. With this record, I have a story, of course, of an ancestor of mine who was born in 1874. And I know he was born in 1874 because in the 1880 census and the 1900 census and the 1910 census, I have him between 2 brothers, and everyone's spaced like 2 years apart. In fact, he has a brother that was born in June 1876. Well, this ancestor of mine, his name's John because half my male ancestors are named John. Just a little fun fact about my family tree. John decided he was going to apply in 1950. Yes, he was born in 1874, and he decided in 1950 he was going to apply for a delayed birth certificate and say that his birth year was 1876. And in fact, he was born in September 1876, only a couple months after his brother. Now, he didn't take his brother to verify this information. He took his sister-in-law and 2 friends from work that he'd worked with for 30 years. And that's how I know I researched those 3 individuals to figure out who were these people going along with him to make him 2 years younger. I have no idea why he did it. I find it hysterical, personally. I don't know if he wanted to be born during the centennial, because that was the 100th anniversary of the country. I don't know if there was something about September. I have no idea. But thankfully, because he provided the information about his father, John's father was an orphan. And of course, John's father's name was John, needless to say. But because that John was an orphan, I now have a conflicting piece of evidence for where John was born, which I can use to help figure out John's birth parents. So that's a long-standing family mystery there. But back to delayed birth certificates. The state allowed the counties to issue these from 1941 up to 1976. That was the issue date. That wasn't the birth dates of the people on the certificates. As I just explained in my example, they were born way before there were registrations in the counties. They're always worth looking up, and again with the siblings and the cousins. You never know who might have applied for one. Not everybody did. For instance, not every woman worked in the workforce, so they didn't necessarily apply for a Social Security number. Now, to find them, always the tricky part, they were issued by counties, so in the clerk of the orphans court. You'd want to check on Family Search under your county and look under vital records again to see if they have been microfilmed by Family Search and are on there. Again, probably not searchable where you type in the name and it pops up. It might be by now, by the time you watch this video. You never know. These things change. But you can scroll through the roll and look for your ancestor. I noticed in some counties, they actually had people state where they went to school, elementary, junior high, high school, if they did college, and then every place of employment and for how long. Wouldn't that be an amazing piece of information to have on your ancestor? I mean, that is just great. So check out these delayed birth certificates, dig them up, If you can't find them on Family Search, contact the courthouse. Everybody's got email now. Just type in your county into an internet search bar. Make sure you add a Pennsylvania on the end because a lot of other states copied our names. We had them first. And then you can figure out who to reach at that courthouse to get these delayed birth certificates. You definitely want to get them. And if you need further help to find them, or you just want to share your excitement with me about these delayed birth certificates, you can go to paancestors.com. I have a testimonial button on there. If you find one and you use it to solve a family history problem or just discover something neat, I'd love to hear about it. Shoot me a little testimonial in there about what you found. I really would love to hear it. And the other piece of information is I do have the research Q&A for my Inner Circle members, and you can ask any question you want about genealogy research or, Pennsylvania stuff because I'm a Pennsylvania nerd. You already heard that. And then I will answer that in the live Zoom session, and then you can watch the recording if you weren't there. And we could just chat in the live Zoom. It's fun to chat and hang out, right? Right? Yeah. So I hope to see you in the Inner Circle. And I also hope that you discover something fun about your Pennsylvania ancestors from these delayed birth certificates.